Okay, here's a little video about Veruca Salt. You can see she goes up and down falling through the trap, and the educated educator tells us that she's bad. Starts off good and goes bad. Now, it's powered by a Chevrolet wiper motor that's wired to a DC speed controller, so I can control the speed of the motor, full speed, or I can slow it down, and I also can turn it off. It's then wired to a 12 amp 5 volt power converter, and then it gets plugged right in. I had to replace the main, I don't even know what it's called, whatever, the piece that connects to the shaft with this longer arm, because I needed to get 10 inches of motion on Veruca, and the original arm gave me 4 inches of motion. So I found a piece of scrap that I had, and because Veruca has to go straight up and down, I needed to convert the circular motion into vertical motion, so I need to use this other PVC arm to translate that motion. I had a lot of difficulty getting the relationship right between the length of the metal arm and the PVC arm. Veruca kept falling down into the pit below this because the PVC was shorter than the metal arm. It seems logical now that I've figured that out, but before it was having a serious problem. And then Veruca's mounted to a wooden dowel, and then she is riding through a piece of 3/4 inch PVC. I've sanded and waxed the dowel, and then I used white lithium grease to keep her lubricated, which is working fine inside, but as soon as I brought it outside in the freezing and sub-freezing temperatures, the grease gummed up, and so I had to wipe out most of the grease and replace it with WD-40. And she's just sort of sitting on top of that. And as she's riding up and down, so she doesn't stick, I suspended a very thin piece, or small diameter piece of PVC, so she can slide up and down across that and doesn't rub up against my vertical shaft. And then for the good-bad indicator, right? So it's all made out of like 1/8 inch chipboard, and there's just a screw in here that it's mounted to that swivels. And I wanted to use the motion of her to turn the good versus the bad. So the simplest way I found was to return it to the good position. I have just a string and a weight, simply pulling the screw back to good. And then when she drops to turn bad, there's a string that goes through a series of eye holes that pulls that down. And when it pulls that string down, it whips it to bad, and then the counterweight pulls it back to good. It's not ideal, and it's not very fast, but it works. The string last night broke or got tangled in the motor assembly, and it snapped off. It's not very robust, obviously, because it's made out of nylon string, so I may figure something out. I'd like to get aircraft wire or something like that, but I'm trying to limit my trips to Home Depot. And then I had to really reinforce the structure of this thing because there's a lot of torque on this motor. So I had to add all these cross braces and corner pieces down there to keep this thing from breaking itself apart effectively. And I keep all the electronics inside the little box and clip it shut. That way, when it snows or rains or whatever, it doesn't get all messed up. And the whole thing is waterproofed. It's painted, of course, on the front with spray paints and acrylic paints, and all the face and the other bit down there, the little Wonka symbol, those are laminated. And then all of the back of the wood is sealed in with deck waterproofing liquid. So if it gets wet or snowed on it, it doesn't really matter. Yeah, so that's Veruca Salt. She's pretty cool. Definitely the most complex one. It probably took me, I'm not joking, maybe 40, 50 hours to just get this back mechanism working. So yeah, that's that one. We'll go on to the other ones next.